most innocent thing your child ever said that exposed something dark? My daughter Chastity was 6 and we were driving home from my mother's house and she said from the back seat, "Mommy, does grandma cry every night?" I kept my hands on the wheel. I said, "Why do you ask?" She said, "Because she cries when she thinks nobody is there. She does it in the laundry room. She's been doing it a long time." I said, "How long a long time?" She said, "Since the summer." It was November. My daughter had been spending Sundays at my mother Myra's house since she was 4. She had been quiet enough in that house to witness things my mother had not known she was witnessing. I did not ask more in the car. Chastity moved on from the laundry room comment with the specific ease of a 6-year-old who had delivered a piece of information without understanding what it meant, and was now back in the ordinary flow of her Sunday. My mother and I had a relationship that was warm on the surface and careful underneath. I had been aware of the careful for my entire adult life, and had stopped trying to understand what it was made of. The summer had been ordinary. She had been her usual self. She had not cried in front of me. She had not indicated in any way that she had been going to the laundry room every night. My father Teddy had died 3 years ago. In the year after he died, my mother had been composed and organized and active in ways everyone admired. I had admired her too. I had said to people how well she was doing. I believed she was doing well because she presented as doing well, and I had not looked past the presentation because looking past it would have required me to be closer to her grief than she was giving me permission to be. She had given no permission. I had taken no initiative. 3 years passed. The laundry room had started in the summer. The anniversary of Teddy's death was in August. I had called my mother on August 14th. She had said she was fine. I had believed her because she sounded fine. We talked for 11 minutes. She had been alone in her house. I thought about whether my call had helped, or whether it was the specific kind of phone call that discharges the pressure to actually show up and produces worse outcomes than no call at all. I put Chastity to bed. I sat in the kitchen. I thought about my Aunt Susan, my mother's younger sister, who had called me 2 weeks after my father died and said she was worried about Myra, and asked if I could come down more often. I had said I would, and I had not. Susan had called again 6 months later. I told her my mother seemed okay. Susan said she hoped so. I understood Susan was not convinced, and I had not pursued it, because pursuing it meant admitting I had not been doing enough, and the why was the thing I could not reckon with. Being close to my mother's grief required being close to my own, and I had not been ready, and I had told myself I had been ready, and I had been lying to myself for 3 years. I called Susan at 9:30 on a Sunday night. She picked up on the second ring in a way that told me she had been waiting for this call for 3 years. I told her what Chastity had said. Susan was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "Thank you for calling." I said, "You knew." She said, "I suspected. I have been calling her 3 times a week, and the calls have been different, and she has been telling me she is fine, and I have known she is not fine, and I did not know how to tell you without going around her. I have been waiting for you to see it." I went to Myra's house the following Saturday. I did not call first. I brought lunch. She opened the door with the surprise of someone who had not expected me. I said, "Mom, I have been not paying enough attention for a long time. I have been telling myself you were fine because you were telling me you were fine, and I have not looked past that. I am sorry. I am going to do better. I want you to tell me how you are actually doing." She looked at her tea for a long time. Then she said, "Okay." She told me about the laundry room, about August 14th, about the 3 years. I listened. I did not fix anything. I did not suggest anything. I just listened the way I should have been listening for 3 years. I said I was going to come every Saturday. She said I didn't have to. I said I knew I didn't have to. I said I wanted to. I said, and also I had to. She said, "I would like that." Chastity ran to me when I got home. She said, "How was Grandma's?" I said Grandma was doing better. She said, "Good." I was worried about her. I thought about a 6-year-old who had delivered a piece of information from the back seat and the chain of phone calls and visits it had produced. I thought my daughter was better at paying attention than I had been for 3 years. The first 2 Saturdays felt real. We cooked together. She pulled out a recipe from when I was in middle school. The kitchen smelled like celery and onion. She seemed lighter, not performing lighter, actually lighter, like something in her body had loosened. I told my husband Matthias she was getting better. I told Susan the pattern was broken. I believed I had fixed it. The 3rd Saturday, I pulled into the driveway and could tell before I reached the door that something was different. The yard was raked. The windows looked cleaned. She opened the door in a nice blouse with her hair done. Tea was already on the table. 2 cups. Cookies arranged in a neat circle. Every surface wiped down. The cleanest the house had been since Teddy's funeral. The careful was back. It was in the arranged cookies and the cleaned windows and the nice blouse. She was not a woman who had been getting better. She was a woman who had prepared a version of better for me to walk into. I could feel it the way you feel a room cleaned in a hurry before company arrives. Everything in its place, but the air is tight. I said, "Mom, how are you really doing?" She smiled. She said, "I'm doing better. You can see that." She gestured at the kitchen and at herself and the tea and the cookies, as if the evidence was right there. She was right. I could see it. The clean house, the nice blouse, the smile. I could also feel that none of it was the answer to what I had asked. I did not push, because saying, "I can feel you performing," felt like standing in her kitchen and accusing her of lying after she had made me tea and arranged cookies in a circle. I said, "Good. I'm glad." On the highway driving home, I called Susan. She said, "How was today?" I said, "Fine." Silence. Then Susan said, "You sound like your mother right now." She did not need to explain. I had just done to Susan the exact thing Myra had done to me for 3 years. Susan asked how it went. I said fine. Fine was not an answer. Fine was a door closing. Fine was the word my mother used when she was standing in a clean kitchen with grief in the laundry room, and I had just used it the same way. I said, "I don't think today went well." She was performing. The house, the tea, the clothes, and I let her. Susan said yes. I had told myself showing up on Saturdays was the fix. I had replaced 11-minute phone calls with 2-hour visits, and told myself the longer time meant deeper connection. It did not. I was physically there and emotionally doing what I had always done, accepting the version of fine being handed to me because accepting it was easier than looking behind it. I had broken nothing. I had just moved the pattern to a different room. The next Saturday, I brought a photo album, one of the old ones from when I was little. I thought maybe the problem was that I kept trying to talk my way past the surface, and what I needed to do was go around it. Myra started narrating the photos, trips, birthdays, the Halloween costume she made that fell apart at the second house, a time I put the dog's bowl on my head and called myself an astronaut, and Teddy laughed so hard he had to sit sit down. She said his name like it was part of the story and not something she had to work up to. She was not performing. She was remembering. Then I turned the page. A photo of Teddy holding me as a baby. He was sitting in a rocking chair. I was maybe 3 months old. He was looking down at me with an expression that was not quite a smile, like he was trying to figure out who I was going to be. Myra stopped talking. The sound went out of her. She touched the edge of the page with one finger, pulled her hand back and said, "Let's put these away for now." I said, "Mom, we can talk about him." She said, "I know we can. I just don't want to right now." She said it the way you close a door without slamming it, quietly, firmly, all the way shut. The next Saturday she called with a headache. The Saturday after that I did not go. I did not have a reason. I just did not go. 2 more Saturdays passed. I called twice. Both calls lasted under 10 minutes. Weather, Chastity's school, a recipe. Both calls were the exact kind I had been making for 3 years before any of this started. I was right back where I had begun, and I knew it. Every day the distance felt a little more normal. Every day the urgency from November got quieter, and the comfortable old pattern of fine got louder. I was choosing the loud thing because the quiet thing meant driving to that house and sitting with my mother's grief and my own grief that I had not touched. Not once, not in 3 years, and I could not make myself walk into that room because I did not know if I could sit in it and still be the person who holds things together. One Sunday, Matthias took Chastity to Myra's for the afternoon because Chastity asked to go, and I said I had things to do, which was not true. I had a clean kitchen and folded laundry, and I caught myself standing in my own laundry room folding towels, and the parallel was so obvious it made me feel sick, but I kept folding. They came home around 5. Chastity walked straight to me in the kitchen. She looked up at me and said, "Grandma asked me if you were mad at her." The sentence went through my chest like something sharp and fast. I said, "What did you tell her?" Chastity said, "I said I didn't know." Then she said, "Are you mad at her?" I said, "No." She looked at me with that face she has, that too old face that sees things a 6-year-old should not be able to see. She said, "Then why don't you go see her anymore?" My daughter had now delivered 2 pieces of information from my mother's house. The first broke through 3 years of avoidance. This one was breaking through 3 weeks of relapse. And the person who noticed both times was the same 6-year-old who watched everything and said nothing until the moment she said the one thing that could not be ignored. I called Susan that night. I did not say hello. I said, I stopped going. I said, I don't know how to be in that house with her grief and my grief at the same time. I don't know how to sit with her without trying to fix it. And I don't know how to not fix it without feeling useless. And I don't know how to feel useless without wanting to leave. Susan was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "That is the most honest thing you have ever said to me." She said, "Your mother feels the same way. She does not know how to grieve in front of you because she spent your entire life being the strong one, and she is scared that if you see her fully broken, you will not come back." My mother was not just grieving Teddy. She was scared of me. Scared that if she let me in, I would see something I could not handle, and I would leave, and she would be alone again. But worse, because she would have let someone in and watched them walk away. I said, "I will come back." Susan said, "Then go tell her that. Don't tell me." She said it gently, but she meant it. I was telling the wrong person. I had been using Susan as a practice run for conversations I never actually had. That night, Matthias found me standing in the dark kitchen. He sat down at the table. He did not touch me. He did not talk. He sat in the dark with me and waited. I said, "I need to go to my mom's tomorrow." He said, "I know." I said, "I don't know what I'm going to say." He said, "You'll figure it out when you get there." I said, "What if I can't?" He said, "Then you sit there and you don't figure it out and you come back the next Saturday and you try again. That's what showing up is." I did not sleep. I sat in the kitchen and watched the dark turn gray, and I did not figure out what to say, and I decided to go anyway. I drove to Myra's house Saturday morning. I did not call first. I did not bring lunch or the photo album or bread from the bakery. I brought nothing. I just drove. She opened the door. Her face did surprise and relief and fear all at once. She said, "I didn't think you were coming." I said, "I almost didn't." No tea this time. No cookies. No performance. The kitchen was just a kitchen. I said, "Mom, I need to say something and I need you to let me say all of it." She nodded. I said, "I stopped coming because I was scared. Not because of you. Because of me. Because sitting in this house with you and your grief means sitting with my own, and I have not grieved Dad. Not really. I did what you did. I stayed busy. I stayed composed. I told people I was fine. And when Chastity told me you were crying in the laundry room, the thing that scared me was not that you were crying. The thing that scared me was that I had not cried. Not once. Not in 3 years. And I did not know what that meant about me." I said, "And then I came here and you told me everything and I listened and I thought I could be the person who shows up. But every Saturday I felt the actual grief getting closer, and I could not let it come because if it came, I did not know if I could keep being the person who holds things together. And I have spent my whole life being that person because you taught me to be that person, because you are that person. And we have both been doing the same thing for 3 years and calling it strength when it was just fear." Myra was crying, not laundry room crying, kitchen table crying, in front of me, in the daylight, with no door between us. She said, "Your father said something to me before he died." I waited. He said, "Stop protecting her from the hard stuff. She can handle it. Let her in." She pressed her lips together. Then she said, "I didn't listen. I thought I was being strong for you. I thought if I fell apart you would have to carry me, and I did not want to be carried by my own child. I wanted to be your mother. I wanted to be the one who was okay." She said, "And then I was not okay, and I could not tell you because I had already told you I was, and going back on that felt like failing." I took her hands. I said, "Mom, I'm going to tell you something Chastity said." I told her that Chastity had come home and said Grandma asked if I was mad at her, that Chastity had looked at me and asked why I didn't go see her anymore. I said, "A 6-year-old is watching both of us, and she is learning how women in this family handle pain. She is learning that we go to separate rooms and close the door and cry alone. I don't want her to learn that. I want her to learn that you can sit at a kitchen table with someone you love and fall apart, and the other person stays." Myra looked at me for a long time. She said, "I would like that too." Then she said, "I miss him so much." And I said, "Me too, Mom, me too." And for the first time in 3 years, I cried. Not in a laundry room, not alone, at a kitchen table, holding my mother's hands, in the middle of a Saturday morning, with no tea and no cookies and nothing clean or prepared or performing. Just 2 women sitting in a kitchen crying about a man they loved who was not there anymore, and who had asked before he left for exactly this. I drove home. I did not feel fixed. I felt emptied out in a way that was different from being empty. Something locked had been opened, and the opening hurt, and the hurt was necessary. Chastity ran to me. She said, "How was Grandma's?" I said, "Grandma and I had a really good talk." She said, "Did you cry?" I said, "Yeah, we did." She thought about this for a second. Then she said, "That's okay. Sometimes crying means you're getting better." I held her and I thought about a 6-year-old who was already better at this than 2 grown women had been for 3 years. I thought about showing up next Saturday and the Saturday after that. I thought about Teddy who asked Myra to let me in. I thought about the laundry room that would still be there but would not be the only room anymore. I put Chastity down. I stood in my kitchen. I did not perform fine. I just stood there, feeling everything, and stayed.